And Pastor Mike, yeah, the devotional.
Hey, how's everybody doing? About 2 weeks now, right? And we're still standing? Still sitting? But Ernie's going to take care of that today, aren't you? Not going to be sitting around anymore. All right. Well, I just wanted to mention a little bit about the way Jesus cared about people. He was always gathering a large crowd, and on at least a couple of occasions, they were out there in the hills without any food. And it says in Mark 8, during those days another large crowd gathered. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way, because some of them have come a long distance. And of course, he goes on to perform a miracle and feeds 4,000 on that occasion. But I just wanted to point that out, that at the heart, I think, of becoming healthy is compassion. Sometimes it needs to be compassion for yourself. And many times it's compassion for other people. And sometimes when we work to help other people be healthy, we end up making ourselves healthy in the process. So I just wanted to remind us that being healthy is not just about following rules or being strict or things like that. At the bottom of it, it's really all about compassion. And it's God's compassion, I believe, that brings us here. And brings us here to learn to make new choices and better decisions. So let's pray. Loving God, thank you for giving us opportunities. And thank you, above all, for your compassion. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. I hope you notice that there was some improvement in this room. Look at that. Our elder, Art Blingy, put all those. Remember that, Tony, when you had to use something because the sun was shining right there, and Poppy too. And then notice this one. And so we really would like to thank the pastoral group for taking care of us, right? And for our sound system department also, we have new mics. So we're very happy. All right, now, before I forget, last week, a couple of people say that, well, remember that we had our cooking demo, and then we always mention no oil, no salt, no sugar. This is just understandable. Just say no oil, no sugar, and then we just want you to cut down those 3 things. And so a couple of people came to me and to my other assistants, and said that, when one time legacy we did not have any salt at all, and then so the heart rate went up to 130 and things like that, and just kind of near fainting. And so the primary physician said, oh no, you have to take extra salt. No, that is not our message. I'm more liberal than Dr. Diehl. I said that you have to cut down the salt, for instance, to less than 2,000 milligram. But for Dr. Diehl, he said 500. So in other words, you have to take some kind of salt, but remember that you don't have to have extra shaker, of salt like this. And even when you cook, you can get by without putting salt. You put some seasoning, and then you put herbs and things like that. And even broccoli, if you just steam the broccoli or boil the broccoli, then when you eat it, there's some sweetness and there's some saltiness in the vegetable. The Lord is so wonderful that when He created all these the edible things, actually we can say that they are perfect. So hopefully that this kind of lecture series, we don't say, oh, don't do this, don't do that, just that you go to the two extremes like that. It's not like that. We just want you to be healthy. That's why, that's how Betty and Vernita, the coaches, that we really need those. If you have any question, just go to the Zoom meeting and just ask questions rather than take it upon itself. Oh, I heard from that meeting, absolutely no salt, no, and oil. Remember that there was a song, like 9 calories, the fat and things like well, anyway. All right, now this is one special meeting this afternoon. Dr. Ernie Medina Jr., graduate from Andrews University with health education, his master's degree and the doctorate degree in preventive care here at Loma Linda University. His emphasis has been, actually his health education is very wide, like smoking cessation, stress management, employee health, etc., etc., etc. All right. Since 2014, he has joined the faculty here at the School of Public Health. And then his important, very important function is the coaching of the wellness. In fact, he was the first one who was board certified coach, like that, and then from the Loma Linda University. So remember I like to mention about the health giants. Of course, we have Dr. Hans Diehl. Last time we met Dr. Wayne Dysinger, and here meet Dr. Ernie Medina. He's also one of the giants because he was one of the founders. These three people were the founders, some of the founders of the lifestyle medicine in United States. So we're so proud that in our meeting we can have these three people to come and coach us how to live well. So this afternoon it is our pleasure to have Dr. Ernie Medina to talk about exercise.
Thank you, Dr. Shirley. Wow, I've never been called a giant before at 5'6", so that's that's new for me to be called a giant. But no, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and Dr. Diehl, Dr. Dysinger, Dr. Youngberg, if some of you know who he is. Let's see. There's a lot of giants in our field of lifestyle medicine, especially from Loma Linda. I just happened to be a student, a graduate student at the time when all of that was getting set up. And so, they needed somebody to be the secretary for this or to be the whatever executive director for that. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And so that's how I sort of got involved with a lot of those things, learning from these mentors and these giants that have been out there for a while now. So it's an honor and privilege to be here to share with you. And I'm glad you can all see my team. So Debbie, if that's not working, so let me know. So that's great. But it's a pleasure to be here and to see all of you. And so I'm going to be sharing a topic. And by the way, you guys didn't get the memo. I'm dressed. We're going to go for a hike up Blue Mountain. So most of you are still in your church clothes. Some of you are dressed. Anybody? No. Actually, I do have friends right now. They texted out and said, hey, we're going to go hike up Blue Mountain at 2:30. Who's in? And I said, oh, I'll be talking about exercise, but they're hiking right now, right up above us. So if you've never been up Blue Mountain, it's the hill, the little peak right there. It's about a 2.5 mile hike up the top, and it's a pretty good stiff hike. So I see some of you nodding your heads that you've been up there. So it's a good stiff hike, but it's a great view from up there. So in the past, I used to go every New Year's morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. We would gather and hike up that to see the sunrise from the top. Did anybody join me on those New Year's hike? Anybody? So, oh yes, Dr. Yeah, sunset. You took that long to get to the top, huh? So we actually did that in the morning, and then for those who couldn't quite get up at before dawn, we also did it at noon, and there were more families there. So at one point we were having like 100 people going up. So it was fun. And then we had little talks by one of our pastors. We had special music. I had to haul up guitars and violins, and then I would bring up some sparkling cider and Dixie cups, and then we would do a cheer at the top, and then I'll come down. So I did that for about 20 years, and I picked up that tradition from Japan when I was in Japan as a student missionary during my college years at Andrews. And that's a tradition in Japan where they go see the sunrise at New Year's Day. So that was the tallest thing around here, at least locally. So that's what I did. And then after a while, I actually contracted cardiomyopathy. Anybody familiar with cardiomyopathy? Yeah, and they were like, "What? How? How you're so active? You're so, how did you get cardiomyopathy?" And my cardiologist, who's a church member here, Thomas Mikowski, and he still works at Beaver, he diagnosed me. And if you don't know what cardiomyopathy is, it's where your heart doesn't pump as well as it should. So I was at the point where, well, this is what caught my attention when he diagnosed me. He said, when a doctor says, that's not a good sign, right? I said, "Oh, what's wrong?" He goes, "Well, you're 10% above the level for a heart transplant." I'm like, "What?" And so anyway, but I started on some medication, and fortunately every year it's gone up, but I was down to 30%. So that's, my heart was only pumping 30% of what it should have been pumping. So I quit doing the hikes because just going upstairs was sort of out of breath. And I just thought, oh, I'm just getting old. I'm just getting old and all this. But no, it was because of that. And so fortunately now it's a little bit better, or it's a lot better, I should say. So I still do physical activity. And when they can't figure out what the cause is, right? What will they sometimes refer it to? Hey, Mary. They'll say, oh, it must have been viral. Who knows? I don't know how I got this virus. Maybe it was on a mission trip. Got a virus, got in my heart, damaged the heart muscle enough. But because I was so active, he said, it probably didn't show up until maybe 10, 15, 20 years later. So who knows when I got the virus. But I never felt I never got sick or anything. So anyway, regardless of what your situation is, whether you have a heart disease situation like myself or some other thing, I really believe you can be physically active. And that's why I have the title here, We Are Created to Move. So I just wanted to start off. Let's see here. Did I turn it on? Yeah. Okay. So this is what I'm going to be covering. Very brief. And we are going to take a little exercise break. And I'll be talking about why that is. And we are not going up to hike up Blue Mountain, by the way. So don't worry about that. But this is what we're going to be covering. But I wanted to first start off with this question right here. You've been talking a lot about nutrition. So I want to see a show of hands. Which of these two, because we're talking about physical activity today, which of these two do you think is more important? Nutrition or physical activity? So how many of you say nutrition? Raise your hand. And I'm not saying that, if we don't eat, we're going to die. Obviously, we need to eat. But how many say nutrition is more important? Raise your hand. Oh, wait a second. Dr. Diehl, look. I mean, how many people? I thought almost everybody would be raising their hand that nutrition, coming in Loma Linda. Okay. How many say physical activity is more important? All right. Oh, okay. About the same. How many say that's a trick question and both are important? Oh, okay. You guys are pretty smart. All right. Both are important. However, balance. Okay. However, I sort of push this question to the extreme because let me give you two examples. Astronauts and somebody in a coma. Now, we know astronauts are probably getting the best nutrition NASA can give them, right? Whether it's in gel or powder or liquid or whatever. They're getting all their vitamins, all their nutrients, all their minerals, all their phytochemicals, everything that NASA can afford. Money is no object. They're getting all the nutrition that they can get to sustain human health and wellness. And yet, if they are in outer space for a long time, what happens to their bodies? They what? They atrophy, right. Yeah, they atrophy. If they're going to go to Mars and they say it takes about, I don't know how many months to get to Mars on our current jet, on our current rocket propulsion. We don't have light warp speed. We don't have stargates. We don't have any of that kind of propulsion yet. So if it takes months to get there and then whatever, if they're out in outer space for a long time, their bodies do what? Atrophy. It gets weaker. Muscles waste away. Bones waste away. Okay. So they're getting the best nutrition that NASA can buy them, yet they still fall apart. What about a patient here at Loma Linda or in any hospital in a coma for years? In a coma. Again, they're getting TPN, they're getting all this nutrition, all these medications, all the vitamins, supplements, whatever, pumped into their body, and yet, what happens to their bodies? Still atrophies. So what is that telling you? I mean, you're getting the best nutrition. You could be eating the best plant-based whole foods diet, vegan to the yin yang. You're the model Dr. Diehl student, and yet if you don't do physical activity, what is going to happen to your body still? You could still fall apart. So the point is, I'm not saying that nutrition is not important, but I'm saying we were created to move and be active. Okay, so yes, both are important. I'm not saying that you can just do physical activity and eat junk, but I find a lot of people, and especially in our church, because we tend to focus a lot on nutrition, which, it's a good thing, because nutrition is a big thing. I just saw a webinar by Dr. David Katz, and he said that, 80% of our disease is based on what Americans are eating. Okay, so nutrition is very important, but I sort of have been focused more on the physical activity because we don't tend to talk about it as much. And so that's sort of what brought me back to Loma Linda, because I wanted to try to see if we could increase the research and the emphasis on physical activity, because Loma Linda is well known for the nutrition side of things. So I always open a lot of my talks with this slide, just because I want you to show that physical activity is very important, even if you are eating the best diet, meal plan out there. Okay. All right. So, I'm showing this because this is, I practice what I preach, right? Those of you who work with patients and clients, if you talk the talk but don't walk the talk, patients will know that, right? They'll see right through you. If I just tell you to do all this stuff and I don't do it myself, then so I do play. The pickleball is something that's come into my life right about the time I was diagnosed. So it was really interesting, and so it was a really lifesaver. It allowed me to stay active, even though my heart ejection fraction was down in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So I could still play pickleball when I was at that level. Mountain biking was a little harder, but I can. There it is. But mountain biking is something that I've done ever since I moved here from Michigan in 1989, and so that became a little harder. Although during the pandemic, to allow me to keep mountain biking, I actually broke down and got an e-mountain bike, an electric mountain bike. Anybody know what that is? Has a little electric motor in it. And but I've been out here in the hills. This is my current dog. I have Roxy, but now she's like 15, so she doesn't go out in the hills anymore. But she ran with me every day pretty much when she was younger. For the first 10, 12 years of her life, she knew the names of the trails. She could be running ahead of me, and I'd say, Roxy, go on monkey puzzle. And as we got to the entrance, boom, she'd shoot right into monkey puzzle, and I'd follow her in there. So she knew the trails. But now she's too old. We just go around the neighborhood because it's just too hard for her. She sleeps all day. But we lived out there in the trails of Hulda Crooks Park, and then I have a Friday morning mountain bike group. Sometimes I see some of you out there hiking on Friday morning, and so I've done that. And all the kids, they now call my e-mountain bike my cheater bike, because they think, oh, he's got an electric motor, he doesn't have to pedal, he can just zzz. No, I still got to pedal. But I've given up trying to explain to them about cardiomyopathy, because they look at me and say, what, you look fine, why do you need an e-bike? But anyway, I still ride with those guys, and so it's a fun thing. So I keep active. Now this is our other dog, Davey. This is my wife's dog. He's a Yorkie. He's 14, so he's also an old senior. But this is what he thinks about physical activity. And this has happened ever since we had him, since he was 1 year old. Now, actually, we got him even before that. We got him when he was just born. But he never liked to go out. And we're like, what? Why? What dog doesn't like to go out? But I think it's because he's only like about 5 pounds. He's really small. So everything out there looks huge to him, right? So maybe he's scared to go out. I don't know. But he would be rather here in bed while Carrie's running on the treadmill. So how many people would rather be in bed versus going outside and exercising? All right, yeah, so especially when it's cold outside. So that's Davey, but I wanted to ask here, and I've talked to some of you before we started, how many of you are doing, would you say on average, 30 minutes a day, or most days of the week? Raise your hands. Wow. Well, good, I guess I can sit down because you guys are already doing it. So that's good. All right, so for the rest of you, so for those who raise their hand, let me ask you, just sort of yell out, what are some of those things you're doing and why? So, well, I saw your hand go up first. What are you doing?
I do my treadmill and my weights.
Treadmill and weights. Okay, and why?
So stay in shape.
Stay in shape. Okay. All right, very good. Is anybody else doing something different than a treadmill and weights? Oh, yeah, what are you doing?
I actually do yoga and the treadmill.
Yoga and the treadmill. Okay, very good. And why do you do those?
Well, yoga for the strength training.
Okay, strength training.
Also for the flexibility and balance.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you got a nice,
Kind of stretching.
good, yeah, yoga's, yeah.
Doing, so relaxing afterwards.
Good. All right. Very good. Wait, okay, yeah, over here. Walking. Oh, that's probably the number one. All right. And why do you do walking? Okay. All right. But is there a reason why you go out walking every day? For exercise? Okay. Good. One more. Anybody doing something different that haven't? Yeah.
I have a trainer.
Ooh. Whoa. A trainer.
Circuit trainer.
Circuit.
8 to 10 pieces of equipment. So it's roughly about, if you add it all, the sets and stuff is about anywhere between 400 to 300, what do you call it, sets.
Reps. So she does circuit training and does up to 300 to 400 reps
Yeah, because it's
when you're done.
one piece of equipment, some days is 3 sets, some days it's 4. Most of the days it's 4 sets.
Wow.
Mountain.
Oh, wow. So she has actually a trainer that helps her to do that. So that's great. That is awesome because sometimes people need that person to help them stay motivated and direct them. So very good. Well, for those of you, the rest of you who aren't doing something, hopefully by the end of today, you'll think of something that you can do because what I want you to think about, exercise in a different way, that exercise is medicine. That's actually a term that's used by the American College of Sports Medicine. There's a whole division there that's all about exercise as medicine. And so I want you to think about the power of exercise. And so here are some of the things, because when we talk about exercise, and I know Dr. Diehl has talked about this, and Dr. Inyos have talked about this as well, when we look at chronic lifestyle-related diseases, right? Two of the foundational things that happen in our bodies are insulin resistance and inflammation. Those are the two things that lead to chronic disease, right? Heart disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, those kinds of things, right? So you want to be thinking about what is it that leads to insulin resistance and inflammation, right? That's what you want to think about. Now, unfortunately, this is, our healthcare system is really a disease care system, right? It focuses mainly on that, treating the insulin resistance and inflammation and the disease, the symptoms, that kind of thing. Our current healthcare system doesn't really focus a lot on the blue question mark at the top, right? That's where really lifestyle medicine is focused on hitting that blue arrow there. So that's what I want you to think about is that, okay, yeah, we know what the causes are of these diseases, but what causes those causes, right? What is the blue arrow? And here's another thing is that if you look at the major diseases in our country here, you look at the root causes down there. You've been talking a lot about nutrition. There's also tobacco use, and then there's excess alcohol, but then there's physical activity. So physical activity is one of the root causes of these diseases. Okay, and again, like I said, a lot of times in our church at least, we tend to focus on the other three, right? Don't drink, don't smoke, and eat healthier. And we sort of just barely pay lip service to the physical activity part, but it is a main root cause of these diseases. Okay, so we look at this. I like this infographic here by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. These are their 6 pillars that they focus on. And look at one of the pillars down there. Okay, physical activity. So physical activity, again, from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, is one of the key pillars. If you want to, in this case here, it says boost your immunity, but it's really one of the big pillars for overall lifestyle wellness. Dr. John Rady is somebody that I've really admired. I first learned about him through that book Spark, where it was about kids' education and changing the PE system. But he's probably the leading researcher in brain health and exercise. And so I follow what he does. I love reading his posts. And one of the posts he talked about was how stress physically changes your brain. It actually physically changes your brain. It's not just inside your brain. It actually changes your brain. And fortunately, exercise can counteract that. And so he talks about how exercise is beneficial for the brain. We know exercise from a mental health side hits a lot of different areas in our mental health, especially during COVID. I had a lot of clients and patients who said physical activity, going outside hiking or mountain biking or walking, things they could do outside safely especially during the pandemic, helped them survive mentally through the pandemic. For me, it was mountain biking and playing pickleball because we could still find courts that were open. Even though Drayson Center was closed, we could still find courts around. Elmer Dignio, I was talking to somebody about Elmer Dignio, and they actually had 2 courts there nobody knew about. We called it our secret pickleball courts because nobody knew about it. But I knew about it because the mayor told me about it, and so we set up our nets and we played there for quite a while, as well as hiking out in the hills and mountain biking. So mental health is a big thing, and this is the thing that as I'm getting older, I sort of see a lot more of this among my friends and their parents, Alzheimer's and dementia, right? How many of you have people in your family that you're dealing with these one or two or both of these things? My wife right now is well, she's probably home by now, but when I left, she was visiting her mom at a unit behind the VA hospital right on that Cole Street. There's two different live-in nursing skilled centers there. Her mom is in the memory lockdown unit with dementia, cognitive issues. She's been there for like 3 years now. She's like 80 something. And so she visits her every Sabbath, goes there, watches the church service with her on TV there. When I go there, I don't know she even knows who I am because she never says, "Hi, Ernie." She doesn't really talk at all. So we don't know when she smiles, when she sees maybe her granddaughter, our daughter, or Carrie. We don't know if she smiles because she just sees somebody or she actually recognizes her because she doesn't say anything. So, it's tough, but she goes there every week, every Sabbath to be with her and spend some time with her. All right, so it's a devastating disease. Now, BDNF, how many of you know what that stands for, BDNF? Anybody know what those 4 letters are? Nobody. Brain, that's right. The B is the brain. Very good. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Okay, brain BDNF, but nobody calls it that because it's such a long name. But brain-derived neurotrophic factor. What that means is it's called Miracle Grow for the brain. For those of you who are old enough, what is Miracle Grow? I don't know. Do they still make that?
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay. Miracle Grow is like fertilizer, right? When I was here at school in Loma Linda, I was taught in my Nat and Phys class the brain cells that we had were all that we got. That was it. But we had, trillions of them, and we're only using 10% of our brain. So we had a lot we had a lot as backup. Well, now we know that's not the case because as you can see here, now we have better technology. We can measure brain activity much, much more in detail, and we know we use the brain a lot more than just 10%. But we also know now too that BDNF acts as a fertilizer. We can actually grow new brain cells. Think about that. We can grow new brain cells and we can increase connections of brain cells because of BDNF. So if you are concerned about some of the cognitive issues, physical activity is one of the best things you can do to increase your levels of BDNF in your brain to then keep helping your brain stay healthy and growing. Okay? Now, Dr. Rady also said, what are the characteristics of the best type of exercises for your brain, or best type of exercise for your brain? What are the characteristics? There are 5, okay? So I'm going to show you what those 5 are. The first one is that you have to use your brain to exercise, okay? What does that mean? So I showed a picture of my wife doing on a treadmill. I know some of you do treadmill, but here's the thing. Treadmill is great. However, do you have to use your brain to use the treadmill? In fact, when I do the treadmill, that's like my last option I will do because for me, the treadmill, stationary bike is very boring. So I have to and my wife, she can read her notes, her lecture notes. She teaches in school of nursing. She can read her lecture notes while she's running on the treadmill. I can't read because I don't know, I just can't lock on to so I have to watch something because I get so bored. So I usually watch, videos or something. But you don't need to use your brain when you're on the machine because you're just sort of going like a little rat on a hamster wheel, right? So it's okay, but from a brain health perspective, probably not the best. So now if you're out there hiking up at Blue Mountain or at Holder Crooks Park, then you have to hike. What are you having to use your brain for?
Make sure you don't stumble.
That's right. Yeah, if you're daydreaming while you're hiking up there, you could literally kill yourself, right? You could walk off the trail and die. So you have to use your brain. That's why I like, when I'm mountain biking, am I daydreaming about stuff? Oh, no way. I'm not daydreaming. I'm paying attention to the trail. And here's a little life lesson. When you're on something like that, whether it's mountain biking or skiing or whatever, and you're on the trail and you see obstacles in the trail like a big rock or a big hole, what are you not supposed to do? You're not supposed to look at that, right? Because whatever you look at, this is a spiritual lesson I use in devotionals. When you look at that, whatever you look at on the trail is what your bike is going to go towards. So if you see a big rock on the trail or a big hole in the trail, and you look at it because I don't want to hit that rock, and you're looking at it, guess what? You're going to hit it. So you look at the path where you want to go. So I look at the path, and I fight the urge to look at the big rock. I look at the path where I want to go, and then the bike goes there. Okay? So that's using your brain, right? Because you have to concentrate. You're playing pickleball. If I'm daydreaming, what is the person going to do? the ball's gonna go right by you, right? You have to use your brain. So think about the physical activity you're doing. Are you using your brain to do that physical activity? The second one is it outside in nature? There's an author, I'm blanking out on his name, but if you Google him on Amazon, he writes all these books about vitamin N. Have you heard of that? Vitamin N for vitamin nature, where he talks about the benefits of being outside. He actually came here to Loma Linda. I don't know, Dr. Diehl, if you heard him speak when he came here. He was for one of our Healthy People speakers. But he came and spoke here about the benefits of being outdoors, okay? And the scientific evidence that's out there that we need to be outdoors every single day. Ellen White talks about that in one of her books too, about the benefits of being outdoors. So is your exercise outside or in nature? The third thing is, does it get your heart rate up? Does it make you huff and puff? Does it make you, short of breath or something? Okay. So if it does that, then that's good for your brain as well. Okay. By the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning. Are you giving them the handouts in there? So if you want this PowerPoint, you will all get the handout. So you don't have to, if you're furiously taking notes or taking screenshots. I saw some people. I mean, you can take pictures if you want. That's okay. But you'll get the PowerPoint. So, all right. So does it get your heart rate up? Number 4, will it keep you coming back? Does it create a healthy addiction? Does the treadmill do that for me? No way. Now if you put dark chocolate on the treadmill, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I'm not kidding. I love dark chocolate, but in moderation. But yeah, is it fun to do? Do you like to do it? Is there some kind of hook that you like to do it, or like people do you do it with, or the activity is fun? If it doesn't create that kind of healthy addiction, it's going to be very hard to keep doing that. And then the last one is, can you enjoy it with others? Is it a social kind of thing? All right. Now, my wife, she does not like exercising with other people because she doesn't want to have to worry about, oh, what time do I have to meet them, and the scheduling and all this kind of thing. She never goes. She has, she works at Loma Linda. She's never been to Drayson Center ever to work out. Never. Okay? Because she just likes to exercise on her treadmill at home, read her lecture notes, have Davey there right beside her on the ground. And that's fine. Or she'll jog around the outside. She's jogged around the neighborhood too, but she's a loner. She likes to exercise. Me, on the other hand, the more the merrier, right? I'm sort of a social exerciser, so I love lots of people. That's one reason why I like pickleball, because on one tennis court, we'll have 16 people playing all at the same time. So it's like a big party. Ever since I started playing pickleball in 2016, my voice, I don't know if you can tell, but my voice has been constantly hoarse because I will always be screaming and yelling on the courts. Not because I'm mad or anything, it's just because I'm a Filipino and that's what we do when we play sports. Ask my mom how golfing is, and it's very embarrassing. So we scream it. And so I've been constantly screaming 4 or 5 days a week because I'm playing 4 or 5 days a week. So if I go to speak, this was pre-pandemic, if I had to go speak at a conference or something, I literally would show up on the courts with duct tape on my mouth. Why do you think I had duct tape on my mouth? So it forced me not to scream. And when people would see the duct tape on my mouth, they'd say, oh, you must be going somewhere for a trip next week, right? You go, mm-hmm. So anyway, I enjoy it with others. We have fun. So think of your exercise that you are currently doing or that you might want to do and ask yourself, does it have those 5 characteristics? And if it does, then it's what Dr. Rady says is a very good exercise for brain health. Okay? Now, I found this more recently. This was a picture showing, there's yoga over there. You could see all the different types of exercises that impact pretty much every area of the brain, from yoga to lifting weights to doing sports drills, aerobic exercise, HIIT, high-intensity interval training. Can you see that, how exercise impacts every single part of the brain? That's why it's good to cross-train. People who are doing cardiovascular and strength training and all these different things, it's good to do a variety of exercise because it utilizes, it benefits every different part of the brain. Okay? Now, another benefit. How many of you have heard people say, they're obese or they're type 2 diabetic or whatever, and they say, oh, well, it's genetic. It's in my genes. When I was working at Beaver, I heard that all the time from patients. They would say, yeah, I've tried this and that, but it's genetic. My parents are diabetic, my aunts and uncles are diabetic, my grandparents are diabetic, so it must be genetic. When they say it's genetic, what are they implying? That's right. There's nothing I can do about it. It's in my DNA. It's hardwired. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, now we know, thankfully, with epigenetics, we know that that's not the case. All right? That's not the case. This is a picture, if you see where the chromosome is at the top left, and then the DNA is sort of unraveling there. So basically, if you see this, there's like the little, do you see that little histone tail? That little tail that's coming from that is like the signaling system that allows the gene is around those little balls. The gene is activated when it's opened. So if something goes on that histone tail, as you see there on the far right, that epigenetic factor, and it goes on that little tail, and it opens up that the clump of balls there, when that gene is open, that means that gene is turned on, okay? But if the gene is hidden, is bunched up in that bottom middle picture there, then the gene is turned off. So yes, genetics is hardwired in our DNA from our parents. We can't do anything about that, at least currently. We can't do gene therapy. But guess what? When we look at all the factors that can trigger that histone tail and turn on and turn off the gene, there is a lot of things that we now know we can do to turn off and on the good and bad genes that we have. I know I have a diabetic gene in my body. How do you think I know I have that in my DNA? Family history, yeah. On my dad's side of the family, he was the youngest of 12 kids. Every single one of his older brothers and sisters were type 2 diabetic. And he eventually got diagnosed as type 2 diabetic as well. The only way they found out he was type 2 diabetic was because he had a stroke. He was a physician, like most of his siblings are. They were all in the healthcare field. Physicians, dentists, nurses. So they were all in the medical field. But he didn't, doctors don't get checked up, right? He didn't go to the doctor. So when he had a stroke, he got his blood work, and that's when they found out, oh, by the way, you have type 2 diabetes. I don't remember what his A1C was, but he had to go on medication right away. So he has the gene. So I know, without doing any kind of genetic testing, I know I have a type 2 diabetic gene in my system, in my DNA, okay? So I'm doing everything I can on that blue question mark there. I'm doing everything I can to make sure I don't put the factors that will turn on that little histone tail to activate that gene. I can't take that gene out, right? But I can do everything I can to reduce the odds of turning on that gene, and that's what I'm doing. So when you look at this picture here, look at all the things that can trigger the good or bad genes. And we look at the very bottom there, exercise. See the exercise down there? Exercise are one of those factors. If you are physically inactive, then guess what? That could turn on that gene, that bad gene. My dad, being a busy physician, running his own clinics, he didn't have time to exercise. He played golf a couple times, once a week or so, but he rode a cart, and he was a very good golfer. So he'd hit the ball, get out of the cart, walk right there, hit the ball, get back in the cart, and drive. Me, when I play golf, I don't play golf a lot, hardly, but when I play golf, I hit it over here in the woods, over there in the sand, over here. And so I'm walking all over the place because I'm cheap. I don't want to lose a ball. So I got a lot of exercise, but he didn't get a lot of exercise doing that, okay? If you look at some of those other negative things, disease, drugs, toxins, your psychological state, if you're under a lot of stress, your diet is a big epigenetic factor. Social interactions, do you get a lot of social connection and that? All these things can be factors that can turn on and off those genes, okay? So things that you are learning about here are all the good things that will turn off or keep the switch off for the bad genes and turn on the good genes. Does that make sense? So even though it's genetic and it's hardwired in our system, you do have a lot of control. I've been trying to find the latest percentages. What I've heard other speakers say is about 75% of our behavior and environment impact our genetics. 75%. Is that a pretty good odds of controlling your genetics? I would take 75%, so that's pretty good. So again, I still might get diabetes down the road, maybe, but I'm doing everything I can to make sure I keep that gene turned off because I know I have it from my dad. My mom's side is healthy for some reason, but most diabetics are what kind of ethnic groups are very high in type 2 diabetes? Like which ones? Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, and what's the fourth one? Native Americans, right? Exactly. So those four are very high genetic-wise in type 2 diabetes. We have friends, I have colleagues who work at the Indian reservations around here. Over 90% of them are type 2 diabetic. Very, very high. Because you look at their lifestyle, a lot of them are alcoholics. They eat a lot of, the wrong foods. You know, maybe they're physically active or not, I don't know, but you know, they have a lot of these negative things here, and so they're a very high percentage of type 2 diabetes, okay? All right, type 2, and speaking of type 2 diabetes, I love talking about, we could talk another hour or two just on type 2 diabetes, but I'll give you just the Reader's Digest version. When I talk about exercise with type 2 diabetes, you know, we think again, oh, well, there's nothing I can do, it's genetic. No. What is the root cause? Insulin resistance, right? At that cell door where the insulin key unlocks the door to let the sugar go in, right? So it's not that the sugar is causing type 2 diabetes or your body's not making enough, that's type 1. It's that the insulin isn't able to do the job to open the doors to let the sugar in from the bloodstream. So it's that insulin resistance. I use the analogy of the door has a keyhole that's all clogged up, right? So the keyhole is clogged up. The key is the insulin key. You know, if you were at your house and you were trying to get in and you got your key and then you try to stick it into the lock to open the door, but you couldn't get it in because it was plugged up, would you go down to Home Depot and make 10 copies of your key and then come back to your house and then try to open the door? Would that work? What about if you made 20 copies of your key? Would that work? No. What about 30? No. So that's the thing. Just getting more keys isn't really going to treat the problem, right? What do you need to do to the lock to unlock the door? Unclog the keyhole, right? So guess what is clogging the keyhole? Okay? It's our lifestyle. Did you know that in ancient Egypt, they have records of Egyptians having type 2 diabetes? Guess what kind of Egyptian had type 2 diabetes? The pharaohs. Why would the pharaohs and the royalty have type 2 diabetes? Because they could eat whatever they want. The meat was, you know, common to them. They could eat all the refined processed food. Plus, did they have to work? No, they had slaves. They had servants to do all their work, right? So the rich Egyptians, they did all the things that we're doing today now. Now, we don't have servants here. I can't afford somebody to clean our house or mow our lawn. But what do we have here today that acts as our servants? No, servants from work. I'm talking about like from physical activity. Machines, technology, right? How many remember, what am I doing when I'm doing this? What is this? Yes, opening a window. Now I was looking at the younger people like Jackson over there, and he's probably looking like, what is he doing? Is he dancing? You know? Because I don't think Jackson's old enough to have a car that you had to do this, right? We had a car that we had to roll down our windows, remember? You know? So, so yeah, you know, now we can push a button for almost anything. So technology is our servant. It does all our work for us. So also, if you want to unclog those keyholes, here are the 3 steps how exercise can help to decrease insulin resistance, unclog those keyholes, so then the system can work the way it's supposed to work again, okay? Number 1, when you exercise, you open the doors automatically right now, okay? Even if you have clogged keyholes. So what I would tell all my patients after a meal, especially a big potluck meal, I don't know, did you have a big Sabbath lunch after church? Okay. Did you go out for a 10, 15-minute walk after you ate? No. Oh, my word. The sugar's just spiking through the roof and you're getting sleepy now. So when you go out, I would tell them to do a postprandial walk. You know, it's not a jog. You shouldn't be sweating. You shouldn't, any of that. Wait about 10 or 15 minutes after you're done eating. Do the dishes or something. Then go out for a walk. And when you're out there walking, what are you using? You're using all these big muscles, right? You're using these big muscles, and they're going to say, we need what? We need glucose. We need fuel to, because he's walking. He's not taking his Sabbath rest, his Sabbath nap. He's not doing lay activities. He's out here walking. So I'm walking. My muscles are saying, give us fuel now. They will open the doors, even though the keyhole is clogged. Does that make sense? So after any big meal that you do, if you have either borderline, your A1Cs are a little high, or you're getting closer, your doctor's saying, hey, you need to be careful, go out for a walk after each meal, about 10 or 15 minutes, after you're done, digesting it and then letting the blood, letting the food get converted into blood sugar. Go out for a walk. Again, it's an easy walk. It's not exercise per se. It's just go out and move, be physically active. The second thing is, if you do this regularly, guess what you're going to do to those clogged keyholes? You're going to clean them out. So you're going to unclog, so you can actually reverse insulin resistance. Now, if you talk to a lot of endocrinologists, or if you go to the American Diabetic Association's website, guess what they will say there in their intro about type 2 diabetes? It is a lifelong disease that needs to be managed. Like, what? What if I'm overweight, obese, 500 pounds, and I get down to 120 pounds? Would they still call me obese, but I'm just having to be managed? No. If I have RK surgery or surgery on my eyes, and I'm very myopic right now, but if I had surgery and I got rid of my glasses, they say, well, you're still nearsighted, but you just need to manage it now for the rest of your life. No, I would say I'm not. So diabetes can be reversed, and so you can clean out those keyholes and then get your A1C and have everything functioning again the way it was God designed it to be. All right. Then the last thing here is that you can also build new doors, i.e., new doors with brand new clean locks. How would you do that? Some of you said earlier you are doing that already. How would you build new keyholes and new locks?
Change your lifestyle.
Well, okay, so through exercise, but what kind of exercise would do that? Would help you to build new doors? What's it? Aerobic? Close.
Cardio.
Cardio? Cross training, that's getting closer.
Interval training.
That's getting closer.
Weight training.
Weight training, there you go. Because when I'm lifting weights, whether it's doing the yoga or Pilates or cross training, but when I'm doing anaerobic, you said aerobic, anaerobic is the strength training. If I'm doing that kind of training, what am I building more of? Muscle. So when you build brand new muscles, do they have clogged keyholes already when you build them? Of course not. They're brand new. They're clean. There's, brand new locks. So by building muscle through anaerobic activity, whether it's doing calisthenics or lifting weights or yoga or whatever, you are building new doors with brand new keyholes, and then boom, the keyholes will be able to open the doors, and your insulin resistance will be lower. So does that make sense? Do you see how exercise for a diabetic or somebody who is leaning towards diabetic can help you immediately right now after every meal over the long term to help clean out the keyholes as well as building new doors? Do you see how that can happen if you're a diabetic? So guess what I do, because I know I have the diabetic gene, I know I have the tendency to diabetes. Guess what I'm doing? I'm doing all these things because I don't want diabetes. I don't want to go blind. I don't want to have neuropathy. I don't want to have kidney failure. I've already dealt with kidney stones, so I don't have kidney failure. I don't want to have to take a shot. I hate needles. Anybody like needles? I hate needles. So I'm doing everything I can to avoid the diabetic lifestyle, because when I was at Beaver, I worked with diabetics who had amputations, who were going blind, who were taking medication, who were taking pills, all this stuff. So I don't want to do that, because I know I could do that if I lived the typical lifestyle, American lifestyle, because I know I have the DNA for type 2 diabetes. No question. Okay? All right. This is one of the last few benefits here. Telomeres. Anybody heard of telomeres? I think you guys have mentioned it. So for those of you who don't remember, those are at the ends of the chromosomes. They're like the little plastic caps at the end of the shoelaces. And here's the thing that's interesting about telomeres. Every time your cell replicates, divides, it takes a digital copy, right? Not a photocopy, right? What happens if you do a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy? What happens? The third or fourth generation is really bad, right? It's blurry, it's yucky, although I did love smelling it, right? That might age me. But when you do a digital copy, you do a perfect copy, right? A digital copy. So every time your cells replicate, they make a digital copy of your DNA, your chromosomes, and they put them in the new cells. And so it keeps copying, dividing. But look at what happens to the telomere. It keeps getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I think God had the telomeres there, and once Adam and Eve sinned, he turned that switch on. Because at the end, that last line, do you see how much of the telomere is left? None. When there's no more telomere at the end of that chromosome cannot replicate anymore. This is what we call aging. So when it can't divide anymore, those cells that you have, whether it's skin cells or muscle cells or whatever cell it is in the body, when there's no more telomere for that cell, it cannot divide. That's it. End of the line. So I think before Adam and Eve sinned, the telomeres were there, but they were not turned on. So they could keep replicating all the time. They didn't have that governing, limiting factor. Then once they sinned, God turned it on, and then it limited, right? So guess what? Exercise has been shown to make the telomeres last longer. All right? So those who exercise have that's part of their reason for their longevity. Now, I don't know. I've tried to look. I've tried to ask. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Diehl knows. I have not found anything nutrition-wise that helps the telomeres to last longer. I don't know yet. Maybe it's sort of a roundabout way of, decreasing inflammation and all that. But I have not found any kind of vitamin or herb or something I can eat specifically that shows telomere length will stay longer. So, there might be. So I'm not saying there isn't. I haven't seen it. But we know exercise helps your telomeres to stay longer. All right. Now, this is a really popular reason why people exercise is because of, weight control and all. And so and some people I know in the literature, they'll say, oh, that doesn't really help you. Well, there's some big studies out there that show people who are successful at losing weight and keeping it off for a year or longer, one of their common denominators is they were all exercising 60 minutes a day. All right? That was one of the main common denominators among all the different groups. So when people say to me, oh, well, exercising isn't really showing, I say, no, from my experience, as well as some of those big database studies, exercising is critical to helping you to lose and maintain and keep the weight off. Now, here's the thing. Like I said, Ellen G. White talks a lot about nutrition. We hear about that all the time. When I was way back earlier, I did some research, and I found she talked about physical activity. I thought, oh, cool. So here are some quotes she had. Action is a law of our being. The tendency of disuse is toward decay and death. Inactivity is a fruitful cause of disease. And look at this, ministers. Where's Pastor Leno? Is he in here? Yes, he's here. Okay. So ministers, teachers. Do we have any teachers in here? All right, we have some teachers here. Students. We're all students, right? You're all learning. So we're all students. And other brain workers. Now, when they say brain workers, are they talking about neurosurgeons and neurologists? No, what are they talking about when they say brain workers? Yeah, that's right. People who have to think, they do, desk jobs a lot of times, office work, they're thinking a lot. So people who use their brain a lot, of severe mental taxation. Oh, does that sound like final exam week? We just had midterms. Severe mental taxation, unrelieved by physical exercise. What these persons need is a more active life and would give power of endurance to all brain workers. Wow. Now here, this is my most favorite quote that she gives, okay? Those whose habits are sedentary. Anybody who have sedentary habits here? All right. Who have sedentary habits, when the weather permits. Where is she writing this from, probably? Probably in Michigan, because at the time, this is 1905. So she's in Michigan, so it's winter there. Exercise in the open air every day, summer or winter. Walking is preferable to riding or driving. Such exercise would in many cases be better for health than... Now this is 1905, people. 1905. If somebody said to her, if she said to a doctor then, walking is better than your medicine for this patient, what would that doctor say? Are you crazy? Guess what? It's 2023. I bet you can go to some doctors and say, walking is better than giving them all these drugs. Guess what that doctor will probably say? Are you crazy? So has a lot changed since 1905? A little bit, right? We have now a lot of physicians and other healthcare workers that know better, but but yet she was saying this way before the American College of Sports Medicine came up with exercise as medicine. She said, and this is 1905. So our church, again, not only on nutrition, but we were on the forefront of exercise promotion, and but not a lot of people know about that. So I love this quote because it talks about how it might, in many cases, be better than medicine. That's like heresy in a lot of healthcare, for a lot of healthcare people. All right. So the bottom line is this: exercise is medicine, and so physical activity is critical to what you are trying to accomplish here at U-Turn. Okay. And this is some of these pictures. These pictures here. This is my daughter here. That when we were homeschooling her, she was swimming was one of her physical activity for the cardio. She also did ballet. She didn't have yoga, but she did ballet for the strength and flexibility stuff. So one of the things though that I'm always concerned about when I'm promoting physical activity is safety. Okay, how can I be safe? And this is, I don't know. Yeah, yes, they're smiling. I told them they all looked like they were in pain. But they were only Nancy Choi, the mom there, and she was the only one that could do that. All the rest of the girls and kids were laughing. This is right. I don't know if does anybody recognize this, by the way? Where is this location? If you've biked or ran on this path, you'll know what this is. This is a common turning around point. Or anybody recognize it? Nope. Santa Ana River Trail. This right here is the back part of Mount Rubidoux. So you're at the base of Mount Rubidoux. This is the Santa Ana River Trail. We came all the way from City Hall of Records, you know, the behind what used to be Sioux Plantation, may it rest in peace. But that we went on that bike path all the way there. So that's Santa Ana River Trail. All right, so safety first. So there are things that you can do to make sure that it's safe for you to exercise if you are not sure. If you're like me, I was going to seeing a cardiologist, so I had to do the last thing there, the graded exercise treadmill test. I have to still do that every year. So I do that every year. Thomas puts me on the treadmill. I get checked out, see how my heart's doing, so all that. The PAR-Q, though, is an easy one that you can do. You can find this on the internet. It's just 7 questions. And so when you do this, you answer those questions, and I have a close-up shot of the questions here. Here are the questions. If you have a yes to any of those questions, you should probably go check with your doctor if you have not already gotten the clearance to exercise. So if you just Google PAR-Q, you'll see this. It's, you know, it's all over the place. This is the short version. So if I was working in health fairs, I was doing health fairs back at Berrien Springs at the big county fair there. When we had a health tent, the church had a health tent, we would do a similar survey like this, the PAR-Q, when we were working or counseling people about physical activity. So this is one that I would recommend to everybody do if they're not sure if I need to check with my doctor, okay? So since we've been sitting for an hour, I want everybody to stand up right now, okay? So just stand up, okay? Even if you're dressed up, that's okay. I'm in my exercise clothes. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start marching in place. Make sure you have space there. I don't want anybody to hit and trip or something. So just start marching like we're marching to Zion, right? Okay. So now while you're marching, I see some people waving their arms, but I want you to move your arms with sort of like, we call this milking the cow. So do it like this with both arms. So just get your arms moving. There you go. Keep it marching, okay? Now stop marching for a second. So now I want you to slowly, you can't put your arms up, you slowly turn left to right. There you go. All right, now reach up high in the sky. Just stretch, touch the ceiling. I know, see Mike Leno, Pastor Leno can almost touch the ceiling there. Stretch. Okay, now give yourself a big hug, or your neighbor a hug if you want. Give yourself a big hug. Good. Okay, go ahead and have a seat. Good job. That is what we call dynamic stretching. You know, we tend to think of stretching as sort of static, like, you know, oh, I'm just stretching like this. But anytime you are exercising, or you're going to start your exercise route, you know, whatever it is, walking outside, riding a bicycle, playing pickleball, whatever you're doing, you should always do dynamic stretching before you exercise. So, you know, I will do, you know, jumping jacks on the court. I will do knee raises like this. Sometimes I will go inside the gym and I will use the elliptical trainer because it does my arms and my legs. Anything that gets you moving, that is a type of what we call dynamic stretching. After I'm done playing pickleball or mountain biking or whatever, that's when I do what I call static stretching, where I'm just doing more of the stretch and I'm holding it. Okay, that kind of stretching. So there are 2 different types of stretches. You don't want to roll out of bed in the morning, go outside, and start doing static stretching. Why not? What might happen? Have you ever taken a rubber band, put it in the freezer, and then taken it out and then pull it? What happens to that rubber band? It's going to break. So if you've been sleeping in bed, your muscles are all cold and stiff. I mean, I don't know. I was reading a thing on the Facebook some friend posted, and one of the things said about, man, you know you're getting old when you're just getting out of bed and you get injured or you feel like you're hurting. And if I was, you know, younger, I would have laughed at that. Now it's like, oh, I could relate to that. You know, just getting out of bed it can be treacherous. So your muscles are stiff and cold. You don't want to be doing static stretching because they're not warmed up. So anything that you can do to do movement kinds of activities. You know, I'll do the motion of, you know, hitting, or if I'm pedaling, whatever. I'll do anything to move the muscles before I do the workout. That's dynamic stretching, or dynamic stretching warming up. Okay? So we just did just a really quick, simple thing here. Now, when we actually talk about exercise, I have a 3-stool picture here, but there's actually four legs. I couldn't find a 4-legged stool. So these are the different parts of exercise. Okay, there's the last. So there's the last one. Okay, some of you mentioned that. I think some of you mentioned that, right, about balance. So when I think about exercise, I think about all of those kinds of things. Aerobic, most of us are familiar with aerobic activity. Aerobic means what? What does the word aerobic mean? With oxygen. Okay, so with oxygen. Anaerobic means what? So does that mean I'm exercising while I'm holding my breath? You know, I go, then no. Anaerobic means it's just really referring to how the muscle, what energy system the muscle is using to function. So anaerobic means that you have to use a different energy system that doesn't require oxygen. It uses ATP and other things. So like sprinting, lifting weights, doesn't require oxygen. Aerobic, running, walking, swimming, jogging, marathon running, that's a little slower system, but it can give and create a lot more ATP over a long period of time. ATP is the energy packets that run the muscles, okay? So we are familiar with aerobics and anaerobic flexibility, that's the stretching. And then the balance, you know, that's something that has been more popular when you're talking like, especially like with seniors or people who are injured, you know, standing up on one leg. Now see, for me, I can stand on one leg better than the other because I've had one leg that has had a lot of sprains from racquetball. So the ligaments in one of my feet, one of my ankles is not as good as my other. So when I'm standing on this right leg here, I wobble more because my ligaments are a little bit more damaged there. So balancing is another type of exercising that you can do, especially if you have balance issues. So when I think of exercise, I'm actually thinking of all four of those different things. And that this is the formula that we use when I want you to think about that talks about, think about an exercise thing. Frequency, intensity, time, and type. FIT, okay, F-I-T-T, all right? So when you think about an exercise program, think of the word FIT. Now, this is the general recommendation, federal guidelines for physical activity, aerobic, this is aerobic physical activity for Americans. Every American is recommended to be doing this minimum amount of physical activity, 150 minutes of aerobic activity per week, moderate intensity, okay? So now the intensity is what? The I? Moderate, okay? The frequency is a little tricky here because it says per week, so it's saying per week, and then how many minutes? What's the time? The T? 150 minutes, okay? And you might be thinking, well, why did they say 150 minutes per week? Why didn't they say 3 days a week of 50 minutes? Okay, I actually asked that question when these guidelines came out. I think they came out in 2009. When they came out and they presented it at one of the conferences, I asked in the Q&A, I asked, why 150 minutes per week? And they said the research at that time did not support 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or 6 days or 7 days. It did not say which day frequency was the best. So they just said, but the dose, 150 minutes total per week, is been shown in the literature that if you hit that, man, we could reduce healthcare costs across the country incredibly, okay? And so 150 minutes is the goal. Now, having said that, if a patient says to me, well, does that mean I can just go out here for a hike, you know, 2.5 hour hike and just once a week? And then have I met the recommendation? Well, technically you have, right? 150 minutes per week. But I will ask them this: when they ask me how many days a week should I exercise, my typical answer is, well, how many days a week do you eat?
7 days.
You know, do you ask your dentist, well, how many days do I have to brush my teeth?
Yeah.
Now, if he wants business, he'll say, oh yeah, 2 days a week is fine. Maybe 3 if you're really doing it, but you only do 3 days a week, that's fine. And here's my number on speed dial, right? So, yeah. So, you know, but most dentists will say every day, right? So most of them will say twice a day or flossing, you know, whatever. So I typically will tell patients, you know, jokingly, you know, how many days do you eat? But typically I shoot for 4 or 5 days. 5 days a week, 30 minutes. That seems to be, you know, doable. You still have 2 days where you can be a couch potato, you know, a slug. It gives you that lead. I rarely will ever tell somebody 7 days a week. Why not? Why will I not say somebody 7 days a week?
Might not be sustainable.
Yeah, because if they miss one day, they miss Monday, they're like, Sunday they did really well. Monday, oh, man, I missed it. So then what happens? I blew it, so therefore I'm not going to do it the rest of the time. I'm off track. So they'll say, I'll wait till next Sunday and start again. All right? So I don't ever say 7 days a week. So 5 days a week you can do 30 minutes, that kind of thing. 3 days a week is fine even, but whatever. But that's why the recommendation like that. So 150 minutes per week, moderate intensity. We'll talk about intensity in just a second. Seniors, same recommendation. Kids, 60 minutes a day. Okay? So when we were homeschooling Summer from 1st grade to 10th grade, she was doing swimming pretty much every day or hiking or running with us. She did her first triathlon when she was 5. She was bicycling. This is my nephew Javen, who's now at Andrews, but he would be on that trailer bike. So they were doing something physically active pretty much every day. Then on Sabbath afternoons, we'd have a whole slew of kids hiking up Hulda Crooks Park, because all the kids love to run around and all that. So that's the recommendation for kids. And here's the thing: just do something. Try to do it every day if you can, but again, you don't have to. And you can do it in as little as 10-minute blocks. I remember I had a patient once who couldn't even do that. So she had a stationary bike in her home, a recumbent bicycle, and so she was doing 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at lunch, and 2 minutes at night. That was all she could do. So I said, that's great, just do that. And then over time, we kept bumping it up, bumping it up, bumping up. But you can do it in as small as 10-minute blocks. So if you did 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes in the evening, that's 30 minutes. Yeah, so it's okay to break it up. You don't have to do it all in one shot, okay? Now, the intensity part is this. How do you know if you're doing the intensity? There's a lot of formulas out there. You could use your heart rate monitor. I found that was a little too confusing for a lot of people. So this is what I would always ask him, okay? You're Tony, right? You're the marathon runner. So I would ask him, he's out there exercising, he's hiking around. So Tony, I say, hey, Tony, can you sing while you're out there hiking? No, you can't sing. Can you talk? Okay, can you talk? Are you a little out of breath or a little bit okay, you're huffing, puffing sometimes depending on if the trainer is, okay, but you can't sing. Okay, so he is at moderate intensity. If you can't sing, but you can talk, or you can talk and be slightly out of breath, you're at moderate intensity. Now, if Tony says, man, I can't really finish a sentence, or if he says, man, I can't even say a word edgewise at all, he's at high intensity. Maybe he's going up a really steep hill, or he's trying to catch up with his wife or something, I don't know. But, he's trying to keep up. He's huffing and puffing, and he can't talk, then he's at very high. So if they can talk but not sing, that's moderate intensity. Does that make sense? Now, does that mean that's going to be the same for everybody? No, of course not. Why not? If I go walking with you, and we're walking at the same speed on the sidewalk, and I'm holding a conversation with you, are we going to be able to talk the same?
Might not. Depends on that level of that person.
She'll probably be chattering away, and I'll be huffing and puffing. Okay? So it all depends on where your fitness level is at, right? Maybe my cardiomyopathy is keeping me from keeping up with you, but my pride isn't, so I'm trying to keep up with you, and you're going, and I'm like, yeah. See, so it depends. So it's not a speed-based thing. It's an individual-based thing. So that's why I always ask every patient, can you sing while you're exercising? Now, the only exercise that I don't ask that question on is if they tell me they are into swimming, because I don't know anybody who sings while they're swimming, unless they're on their backstroke maybe. So I don't usually ask that. Plus, that's your horizontal. That's a whole different issue anyway. So does everybody understand how you can measure moderate intensity based on your talking, okay, and not singing? So that's moderate intensity. And actually, over time, let's say you're walking that same route over and over again. And in the beginning, you're sort of short of breath. Then a couple months later, you're walking that same thing, and you have a friend join you. And you're walking the same speed you always do, the same time, okay? But now you're able to talk, and your friend is doing what? Gasping. And you're like, oh, wow, am I going too fast for you? So what will happen over time is if you keep doing the same speed and the same time for that same distance, your fitness level should be doing what? Improving. So pretty soon you're going to be like, wow, I can sing while I'm doing this route. So if a patient told me that, then what I would tell them? You need to go faster, or you need to change your route, or you need to add weight to your backpack. Now, one thing I will say this since I mentioned weights, I do not like people holding weights or having weights on their wrist or their ankles while they are walking. Why not? Anybody? Oh, I want to ask, because I know somebody. I see this in Loma Linda all the time. All right, I see people out there, they're lifting their weights and they're walking, all this. Why do not I don't encourage people doing that?
Because you can mess up your bones inside.
At your joints, yeah, that will throw your gait off. It could cause you to maybe fall and trip. Plus, you're trying to kill two birds with one stone, and so, which I hate that saying, but if you're gonna try to do strength training, just do strength training when you get home. Don't try to do it while you're doing your cardio, because it puts a lot of extra strain on your body and your joints that it wasn't prepared for, especially if you're swinging these weights or your leg is moving like this. So I say leave the weights at home. The only time I will say you can do weights, like let's say I had a patient once who was getting ready to hike Mount Whitney, climb Mount Whitney. So she would have a backpack and go hiking, no weights in it. Then the next week she would put a few rocks in it. Then the next week she'd put more rocks and more rocks and more rocks. So pretty soon she had like 50 pounds of rocks in her backpack. Okay, she needed to do that because that's what the weight was going to be on her backpack going up Mount Whitney. So now why is that okay versus weights on the ankles or the wrists? Why is that okay to have the weights in your backpack? Your core is what? Is holding the weight. Okay. And what is it about the core that's different than your wrists and your ankles?
Your core is really strong.
Small muscle, back one stronger? Close. These are all moving, right? If the back pad is here, my core is not moving. So it's not, yeah, so it's not a movement kind of thing. So, you know, centrifugal force and all that, the core there. So if you wear, like, have you seen one of those vests that have the weights in it that you can put the weights in? That's perfectly fine. You know, you could even use a fanny pack or something. That's perfectly fine. It's on a part of your body that is not moving in space. Does that make sense? When I did my kids for mountain biking, we had some kids that were on the mountain bike team. They actually did races. So what I did was I put a little weight. You know those little weights you can buy? They're like lead solid. They're like pretty heavy, but they're small. They're about this size, actually. I would put one of those in their little packs under their seat. Okay? It was really small, so they didn't really notice it. But every week, I would put another one, another one, another one, another one, slowly. Did they notice it? No, because it was just a little bit. Then when race day came, we took out all those weights out of the little bag under their seat, and guess what they felt? They said it felt like. They felt like they were flying because like their bikes were so light because their bodies got used to it. So see, it's not on a moving part. It's okay. So that's, if you want to increase the intensity, that's one way you can do it, is put weight on your core or on something you're carrying, but not on moving parts. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm always tempted when I see people on the streets doing that Loma Linda. I want to pull over, but they're like, oh no, just stay out of your business. You know, that's not your business. So now here's another way you can track it besides minutes. How many of you use step counters? Okay. Very popular. You know, your watches will do that. Phones will do that. So you probably have heard of this, the 10,000 steps a day, right? That's the typical thing. There's been a lot of controversy around that because that was actually a marketing promotional thing from the Japanese company that first came out with pedometers. They came up with that thing, 10,000, so that was not based on science. However, later on I'll show you in a study that shows what is the scientific one. But steps per day, if you wanted what we consider a couch potato, we used to say 3,000 steps.
Oh my God.
I don't know if anybody has a counter on right now, but look at your counter if you have it on your phone or your watch and tell me, you know, and see how many steps you've walked today. Now, you're probably in church, you know, and all this. And so if you have, Sabbath is always usually my lowest day unless if I go for a hike or something in the afternoon. It's typically my lowest day, all right? But now, here's the thing. This is from the more recent research. If you are getting less than 5,000 steps a day, okay, less than 5,000 steps a day, you are considered sedentary, okay? 5,000 steps. Okay, so if you want to monitor yourself, that's one way. Now, this is a recent study that I just found, 2022, and this is a little bit more scientific than the 10,000, but it's pretty close. If you are 60 or over, your health benefits are at 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day. So it's not quite the 10,000. All right. If you're under 60, you can go from 8 to 10,000. So we're just almost there at that point. So it's pretty close. Okay. So some patients, they didn't want to do minutes. They didn't want to count all that. So I would have them use this as their guide for trying to get how many steps per day. Okay. I had a patient once. I put this here because of a reminder. I had a patient once. He lived in Redlands. He worked at JPL in Pasadena, 2-hour drive. Okay. Sat in his car, drove 2 hours. He was a rocket scientist for JPL. Sat in front of a computer for 10 hours, got in his car, drove back home for 2 hours or more because of traffic, got home, sat in his chair, ate his TV dinner, went to bed. That was it. That was his life. Okay, 4 hours on the road, 10 hours in front of a computer screen, watching television, eating dinner at night, and then going to bed. So guess how many steps he got in a day? 2? Well, he got 1,500 steps. So he didn't even get to 3,000, much less 5,000, right? So guess what our goal was for him? Did I tell him, yeah, you need to go for 10,000? Did I tell him that? No. What do you think I told him he should shoot for? 3. I said, let's shoot for couch potato. Yeah. So 3,000 steps. Just double it, right? So then that's how I would typically bump it up. I won't go right to 10 right away. Okay? So now having said that, you could be doing your 150 minutes a week, your 10,000 steps, your 30, 60 minutes, 5 days a week. That's great and all. That's what we call the exercise prescription, okay? But what are you doing, and I want you to think about this, what are you doing the other 15 plus hours in the day? Okay, that's the question you need to think about. What are you doing the other 15 hours a day? And this is where we talk about is sitting, which is what you're all doing, except for a few people in the back, is sitting killing you. Now, this came out to be very popular back in 2013 at a TED Talk by this lady right here. Have you heard this saying before? Okay, so it's been out for about 10 years now. She's a businesswoman. She's not a healthcare person, but she said this at a TED Talk. So that's what sort of got the whole ball rolling. Now, I saw this from a cardiologist at Mayo Clinic. Okay, she's got a little bit more credibility. And look what she said here. For people who sit most of the day, the risk of a heart attack is about the same as smoking. Whoa, that's pretty heavy stuff. If you sit most of the day, it's the same as smoking? When the General Conference had their big session one year, and I saw the schedule, they started with worship in the morning at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, had meetings all day till like 9 or 10. I said, wow, they're having a big smoke fest over there. And I actually emailed some of the health directors and said, are you going to do something about that or do some activities? Because it's like they're smoking all day. They didn't quite like that, but, you know. Anyway, I was thinking of this. If you're sitting all day, it's just about as bad as smoking, which is pretty serious, right? So I'm just going to go through quickly here because I know we're running out of time. But, you know, it's been linked to, guess what? Our lifestyle-related diseases. And this is what really, this is what happens in your system. You don't need to understand, but certain bad things go up and certain good things go down. You know, that if you're sedentary all day long, these things change and all that, okay? Now, this is really what caught my attention. This effect is independent of physical activity. What does that mean? All right, what does that mean? Well, I have it more. Oh, and by the way, I just found this just recently, just this week actually, that you could do as little as 1 to 5 minute movements every hour to help protect you. But this is the thing. If you are like Joe, like I was like Joe, the green box there is my structured physical activity, you know, 30 minutes, an hour of activity, and I might do a little bit of physical activity, those yellow bars, but the rest of the day I might be sedentary at my desk, in my car, or whatever. Look at the risk factor for, this is for cancer, where I'm at on that bar. I'm still in the high yellow, right? I'm not in the green or the blue. So even though I do my hour of exercise, I'm still at risk because I'm still sedentary a lot of the days. Now look at Joe at the very top. He does his hour of exercise, plus he's physically active all day long. Where's his bar? Where's the indicator for his risk? It's in the blue, right? That he's at the lowest risk. So again, what I was just saying is that if you take 1 to 2 minute break every hour, and that's what that exercise snack slide that I showed earlier, 1 to 2 minutes break every hour, you will lower your biomarkers down into the blue. So if you have a sedentary activity or sedentary life, just get up and move every single hour. You had a question? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. This is not about getting your cardiovascular up. This is just getting up and moving. Because again, what were we designed for? We were designed for moving. So I'm not saying about we're training for a marathon that you have to get up and get your heart rate up and get all sweaty and all. No, you just got to get up and move a little bit. You know, go outside, walk around the building, go up the stairs. So we're talking about really mild exercise. So this is really trying to break the cycle of being sedentary because we were not designed to be sitting all day. And most of us, unfortunately, have jobs, right, that are sedentary most of the day. And then we think, oh, I ran this morning for an hour, so I'm good to sit all the rest of the day. No, you're not. That's the thing that really caught my attention. So this is what I call an active couch potato. They exercise, they get their prescription in, then they sit the rest of the day. All right? So I use the nutrition thing. What if I told you, Dr. Diehl doesn't know about this yet, but what if I told you there's actually a supplement you can take that offsets all the negative eating? It counteracts all your you could go to In-N-Out every night, every day, and take the supplement, and all those negative effects that you're learning here will be gone. Would you like to take that vitamin? They're afraid to raise their hands. They're like, oh, man, where can I buy that? I'm going to talk to them afterwards. No, there is no such vitamin out there that can do that, right? Okay, that is what that 30 to 50, 60 minutes of exercise is. It's that multivitamin, okay? But sitting all day, 15 plus hours a day, is the junk food diet. 15 to 60 minutes a day will not offset 15 hours of sitting all day. Just like there's no vitamin out there that will offset a junk food diet. Does that make sense? So that was a message I had to swallow. That was a pill I had to swallow because I thought, oh, I'm active. I get my exercise in. Then I sat the rest of the day. When I was at Beaver, right, I was sitting at my desk working on the computer or talking to patients. So, you know, but again, you don't have to go out and run a marathon every time. Just 1 to 2 minutes, exercise snacks, they call them, 1 to 2 minutes every hour, just get up and move. That's it, okay? So if you're doing in the danger zone that people are entering in, those biomechanical or those biochemical changes and all, 6 hours is that number. Okay. If you're sitting 6 hours or more, then you are in danger if you are not breaking it up with some kind of physical activity. Okay, anaerobic, twice a week, strength training. This was a workout I gave to my patients. Just a very simple, I called it a kitchen workout routine because you could do it all in your kitchen. If we had more time, we could go through all of those, but it's very simple. And so, we're running out of time, so I'm going to just jump right to this. These are the excuses I heard why people don't exercise. And how many of you can relate to any of these? Okay. Now, which of these 5 do you think is the number 1 reason why people don't exercise? No time. That's right, no time. So, but does anybody, for those of us who do exercise, do we have more time than those people? Do we have 28 hours versus 24? So do we have the same? So how do we do that? Yeah. So here are just some things. I'm going to go through this quick because I know we're getting close to time here. Some people say it's expensive. There's a lot of free and low-cost things you can do. The only thing I will say is do not skimp on are shoes. I have seen more injuries and more problems with improper shoes because they wanted to save, a few bucks or something. Always make sure you get the best shoe for whatever you're doing. If you're playing pickleball and I look at your shoes, first class, and they're running shoes, I will tell you, you need to not play in those shoes because you're going to, we've had people break hips falling because they had the wrong shoes, okay? If you are out walking or running and you're just using some cheapie from Walmart, I'm going to say, uh-oh, be careful. So when I was at Beaver, I sent them all to Running Center over there. This is in Redlands. Running Center, because they will actually bring out a bunch of shoes, have you walk back and forth in the store, videotape you, look at your feet, how it moves. I tend to pronate, so my foot goes one way. We had a pastor here once, Pastor John Choi. He bought shoes from a local sports goods store, which is not around anymore, and he bought it because the salesperson said, oh yeah, this looks good for you. And it turned out that Pastor John pronated, but this shoe was designed for a supinator, and so it caused his foot to do what? Pronate even more. So within 2 weeks, he had terrible shin splints. So when I looked at his shoe and I looked at the wear pattern, then I looked it up online and I asked him, have flat feet? Pronating is this way, flat feet. He goes, yeah, I have flat feet, no arch, which is what I have. And then I looked at the shoe and it was for somebody who had the opposite condition. So it was making him go more flat-footed. I said, well, no wonder you're having issues because you bought the shoe that was designed for somebody who had the opposite problem that he had. So he brought it back, and fortunately, they gave him back his money after much arguing. Running Center will take it back even if you used it for a few weeks, okay? But they will put you in the correct shoe for whatever activity you're doing. So I say, hey, it's better to spend a little bit more money, get the right shoe, and then avoid all those healthcare costs and medical pain and suffering and all that. So shoes are one thing I really tell people not to skimp on. If exercise is painful, there's a lot of different things. Again, you can see this in the handout. A lot of different ways that you can exercise. There's a lot of different machines out there that are low impact that you can do. If you don't have time, which again is the number 1 reason, I try to focus on why are you exercising, or not only why are you exercising, is what is important to you. Is it your studies? Is it your family? Is it whatever? You can usually find a way to connect exercise to helping them get that benefit or get that desire. So that's what I try to do, and that's what I call ROI, which is what? Return on investment, right? That 30 minutes I put in is going to give me big dividends more than if I just didn't do it at all. So I try to focus on that. You can build it in your day. There are some machines there these are connected to the computer or video game, so they have to be pedaling in order for their device to work. Do you know that? If you stop pedaling, the computer pauses, freezes, the game freezes. So I use a standing desk at my office at work, to keep me sort of up and moving as well. There's all these little different devices that you can have that you can be exercising and still moving while you're exercising. That's Dr. Dos Santos, if you don't know who he is, on the bottom left there. How many of you have seen these? Treadmill desks. They have treadmill desks all over the place. That's one way you can be exercising, or stationary bicycles. Okay? So there's different ways. Now, I use the example of smokers because smokers will always take their breaks. Rain or shine, hot or cold, snow or no. You can set your watch by smokers if you know where the smoker is. Isn't that true? They'll be out there all the time. We need to do the same thing about movement. We need to be as diligent, as consistent as smokers to take our movement breaks as well. So that's what I do. So when I'm in meetings, I'm typically like some of you in the back. I'm standing up in the meetings. I usually stand in the back. You can do walking meetings. We had a dean once that was really famous for doing that. If you say, well, I like to exercise with people, any lopers that we have here? There's a couple? Okay, good. Oh, you know those people? Yeah. I just got that off the internet. So yeah, lopers is a great group to join, and they have all different levels of walkers and runners. Dogs have been shown in research to increase physical activity. There's Roxy. This is actually on Blue Mountain. You can almost see the church from here because that's on the side of the church is down below. So pets have been shown. How many of you think you're too old to start exercising? Hulda Crooks, we all know, most of you know who she is, right? She started exercising in her 60s. And when she first started exercising, she could barely walk around her house. That was it. That's what she started, walking around her house and then the block, and then pretty soon what is now the parking lot of Centennial Complex. But she was walking, and then she became famous. You know, they named the peaks after her and all that. So I only got to meet her a couple of times before she, you know, when I was a student here. But I think she passed away when she was, what, 102? 102 years old. So, all right. And you've heard of these with the Blue Zone, all those folks there. Now, here's a picture of my mom. She was 84 when this was last year, she retired from medicine. This was her clinic in Michigan. And she stays very active. She plays golf. Of course, she plays pickleball. Actually, 2 years ago, she won bronze at nationals in pickleball for her 80-plus category with her female partner there. And then when she's at Andrews, they have a nice wellness center there. She works out with weights. So she does the cardio and their strength training both to stay active. And now last year, a year ago, Dan Buettner was back here. They were filming a new updated documentary of the Blue Zone. So he got to play pickleball and film her while they're playing. They said it should be coming out in the next couple of months, possibly on Netflix. So we're waiting to see when we get the word from the producers. And so we're going to be showing that at Drayson Center. But she's been really active all her life. If you can't do it, how many of you have seen these kind of people out there exercising? And this was quite a while ago. My daughter was pretty young, but we would do the triathlons. And this was the one girl that we met there that was just very inspiring. As you can see, she has a double amputee. But she did everything. She did the running, she did the bicycling, she did the swimming, and she just had a big smile on her face the whole time. And everybody was cheering for her. I was so excited. She was the sweetest girl. So, if she can do it, what excuse do most of us have, right? And if it's boring, there's a lot of things that you can do that are fun, that are physically active. There's summer when she was doing her ballet. And then later on, when she went to Redlands Academy, she entered the mountain bike team, and so that was what she does. And she still does that to this day. She doesn't do ballet anymore, but she does mountain biking and running still. So she still stays active. And again, there's my mom. She started in Berrien Springs with pickleball. That's where I learned pickleball, April 2016. This is their gym at their church, in the Filipino church in Berrien Springs. And then you could see the church picture. That's the outside. They actually put the court also outside when it's nice weather. That's the Philam Church in Berrien Springs. And then that's her house. There's her driveway. She plays there. And now they play at the tennis courts at the public school at Berrien Springs. So they have a growing group of people. And for her, it's not only physically active, but it's also her family, her social group. And the pastor for the Philam Church, why am I blanking on his name? Anyway, it'll come back to me. But he plays Pastor Dwight Nelson. I know how many of you know Pastor Dwight Nelson, who just recently retired. Guess what he's doing now? He's playing pickleball with them. So I got a picture that I didn't include in here, but he's playing pickleball. So they play all there at the courts there at Berrien Springs. When we started pickleball here, I was just 9 people. That was it. And then over the course of the years, now we have hundreds of people playing all the cities around Loma Linda. They all started from Loma Linda, and then they started their clubs there. And I put that here, the Grand Terrace one. Tomorrow morning, they'll be here 8 to 11, and then Tuesday night, 6 to 8. They play right here in the back. So if you ever wanted to learn a fun, physically active activity, this is an easy thing to do. And it's open to anybody, open to the community. We have all kinds of people come and play. All right? So in closing, the most important health test, you did your biometrics, right? What do you think is the most important health test that you can take for your wellness out of all the testing that you've done so far? What do you think? Blood test? Okay. Anything else? A1C? Okay, that's a pretty good one. Pulse? Okay. Your pulse, your blood pressure, heart rate. Well, here's a test that you probably have never done or remember doing. That is probably one of the most important health tests that you can do if you want to really know what is your risk of dying or getting disease. All those other tests are really good, but here's one that you probably haven't done, and it's called VO2 max. Anybody know what that test is? VO2. No. Your doctors have never asked you about this or tested you on this? This has been shown to be one of the strongest indicators. This actually article was just published in 2022, so it was sort of an update. But this is a test that you can do to show what is your risk of living longer or shorter if you do this. Okay, now here's the test. So this is your homework that I'll have you do, because if we did this on Sunday and we have more time, we would actually do this here in the back parking lot. But since we don't have time, you can get this in the handout and you can see this. But here's what I want you to do. You find a place that you can walk 1 mile. Now it can be on a track. A track is fine. What I do in my house in Loma Linda, if you live in Loma Linda, you know Lawton, right? Lawton is the long, long street that goes straight. It parallels Barton Road. I just measured from one corner. I drove in my car a half a mile, and then I noticed what was the address at the end of that half mile. That was my turnaround point, okay? So then you just find a course that's nice and flat. Don't make it hilly, you know, don't make it harder. Find a nice flat course so you could do 1 mile, either out and back or around the track or something. Time yourself when you walk it and do it as fast as you can, but you cannot run. So don't run, walk as fast as you can, and then at the end of that, immediately when you cross the finish line, look at your two things: your heart rate. If you have you need a heart rate monitor, or you need to measure your heart rate. Okay, find your pulse right by your thumb here. Do not use your pulse like this. Okay, do not use your carotid artery to take your pulse. Why not? What's that? Block it. So if you block it, what might happen to you? You might faint. So do not do it here. Do it on your wrist, or if you have a watch that can do that. So get your heart rate for 1 minute or 15 seconds and multiply by 4 and the time, and then go to this website. You can use that QR code if you want, but at the website, what you will do is this. You will enter in these different things: your age, your weight, how fast you walk. So this, I put in here 18 minutes and 13 seconds, and then their heart rate at the very end of that walk was 150 beats per minute. This is for a 63-year-old, okay? Then this website will calculate it, and his VO2 max is 19.5. VO2 max is a measure of how much oxygen your body uses in your body. So if your cardiovascular system is really good shape, it's going to use a lot of oxygen. If it's in bad shape, it's going to use lower oxygen. Here he's 19.5 mils per kilogram per minute. He puts him in what category? Very poor. So if we look at the chart, and this on the website, it will show a chart for this age group. You can see here, he's down here at the very poor category. 0 to 21 is a very poor. So then you will get a baseline of what your cardiovascular system is like. Because remember, your cardiovascular system is your heart, your arteries, your veins, your lungs. I mean, it's basically your whole, that whole system. This is the one test that will show you how that system is working. So if you get this baseline and then you exercise regularly and you exercise, you're getting better and better, then you can do this again, let's say 3 months down the road, do this again once a quarter, then you can track yourself and see, is my VO2 max slowly going up? Okay, very easy test to do. So you can do that as homework, and then hopefully you can set up a plan and you can do this at home, because we're out of time, or I'll stay here, if people have questions. I want you to think about, if you're not exercising already, what kind of exercise you're going to do. That's the type. How often, how many days a week, your intensity, talk but not sing, your time, how many minutes are you going to do that on. Your goal is to hopefully eventually get to 150 minutes per week. And then try to think of SMART goals. When we talk about exercising SMART goals, it's not just, I want to exercise more. Think of a SMART goal. Make it a SMART goal, specific, measurable. I put accountable. I know other SMART goals have it differently. Accountable being, who are you going to be accountable to? An exercise partner, a coach, somebody that you can check in with. But who are you going to be accountable to? Is it realistic? And what kind of reward are you going to give yourself? And then at the end, are you doing it for a certain time frame? Okay. So on that note, there is my contact information. And again, Dr. Daniel will give. Did you print it out, or are you going to email it to them? I already emailed everybody. Oh, so in your email, you received this PowerPoint in a PDF. So you have all this information, except I didn't put some of the picture, examples in, like my patient and all, but all the pertinent stuff, you have all of that in there, especially the homework. So hopefully next time I see you guys, you can tell me what your VO2 max is and tell me what your classification is, and then that way I'll know you did the test. So On that note, I think I mean I don't know. It's already 4:34, so I know we're over time. So I'll be around for Q&A or anybody if has any questions, but I won't leave right away. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Medina. Well, I know that this afternoon some of us have to attend the memorial service, and some of us have Zoom meetings, so we are all busy. Well, busy people. It's good to stay busy anyway. And but I have a few things that I need to go over. Tomorrow we're going to meet here, because I think in the original schedule said it at fellowship, but we're going to do it here. And tomorrow there will be a cooking demo. We are going to do it outside. Hopefully it won't be too windy or rainy. And we still have some of these envelopes. Here I have Candy Epperson. Okay. And then I think the rest I did not see that. All right. And starting tomorrow, every Sunday we're going to some of you have, by the way, some of you have been asking for the recipe books, right? Dr. Diehl wrote a recipe book called The Optimal Diet. So starting tomorrow, like every Sunday, we're going to have a special table for the book sale. All right. And then, didn't you just have a milestone birthday? Yes. Compliments of Dr. Hans Diehl. All right, and I think we just have to dismiss early today, and be careful of all the activities. Then just don't overdo. And thank you very much for Dr. Media. Let's bow our heads. Thank you, Lord, for the wonderful exercise lecture, and it's so comprehensive. And thank you for designing our bodies for movement. Please help us to be able to practice what we have learned, and keep us healthy and keep us happy that we can live a good life. Thank you for loving us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So we'll see you tomorrow here, right here.